Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
(6:32). This is a meeting of the WNESU, as in Wyndham Northeast Supervisory Union Board. Today is Wednesday, April 14th, and the WNESU board will come to order. Adjustments to the agenda. Lynn, do you have any besides the one we discussed?
No, I do not.
Okay. Well, that adjustment is 6A. And 6A reads, Proposal for District-Wide Finance Committee. And it will be presented by Jim McAuliffe and Hardy Merrill. And I want to run that right after adjustments to the agenda. It anticipated that we might have folks here for communication and public comment. I'm in a way disappointed that we don't. And in a way, it means we'll all get to go home a little bit earlier. So it is what it is. We'll also give those people a chance to show up. So Jim McAuliffe, if you're ready, and Hardy Merrill.
David, I have an adjustment.
Okay, ready. Let's hear it, Priscilla.
6C, I would like as part of that to be an executive session because that way we can discuss the personnel on there.
Okay, then we shall move 6C to executive session. I was hasty. Any other adjustments? All right, hearing none. Jim McAuliffe and Hardy Merrill, please tell us all about it. And by the way, I want to stop just one moment here. I beg everyone's forbearance. I've asked Jim and Hardy to come in and make a proposal. I think we might want to discuss it a little bit, but I do not want to see action tonight because these would be fairly involved topics. And I think it's important that board members have the opportunity to think them over and discuss them with their boards and come back before we contemplate action. So with that further interruption, that's two. So Jim and Hardy and Jim, we're ready.
Okay.
Go for it.
I'm the designated driver here initially, David. Thank you for hosting us. Just a little background. As you know, I served a number of years on the Rockingham board, then the Rockingham and the high school board, then just the high school board. And throughout the entire 12 or so years, I was on the WNESU board. So I'm fairly familiar with the background here. But what prompted this idea was actually two things. One was that because of the COVID-19, my wife and I were not able to go to Florida this year. And so for the first time in many moons, including my service on the high school board, I was actually here at the time of the high school information meeting. And in getting ready for that meeting, I had called up the superintendent's office and asked for some information. And I actually did get some information, but the request for the high school census, the past 5 years, the number of kids from each town that are at the high school, I got a rejection because that would have been a report that had to be specially made and was not readily available, which kind of shocked me because I thought if you were on the board, you'd certainly want to know those numbers. But anyway, and then the second one was I had kept old copies of the high school booklet, the annual report. And then I got a copy of this year's annual report, and I was aghast. I mean, it was like nobody's going to look at this, so why put anything in it? And I just thought that wasn't the right tone to make, particularly in this day and age. So So I thought of this finance committee, which which in my mind would be composed of 6 people, one from each town in the district, and preferably somebody with an accounting and finance background. I've kind of drafted my friend Hardy Merrill from Grafton because he meets those requirements very well, and but I'm sure that there are people in well, I'm from Rockingham, but certainly from Westminster and Athens that may very well be suited and be interested in being on such a committee. That would be the worker bees, the 2 key people from the school would be the chair of the WNESU and the superintendent or a designee of the superintendent, because clearly the work of the finance committee would be at the direction of the boards and the superintendent. The focus of the committee would be financial analysis, not accounting or reporting or anything like that. Clearly, you have a finance department, the finance staff that is fully involved in those critical features. But basically, the committee would this committee would be interested in information that hopefully would be useful to the boards and to the superintendent's office, work that requires analysis as opposed to just reporting. So I wouldn't see any conflict between this committee and the finance staff. That would not be the goal whatsoever. Again, I know from serving on the board, not a lot of public comes in and talks about things unless there's a change, unless a coach is fired. But there are people out there that are interested in information, and I think the board and the superintendent's office could benefit from our efforts. As you know, David, and everybody else, the principal role of a director, of a board member on our school boards is basically to set the budget. And but the fact of the matter is that not a lot of people that run for the board have a background in budgets or finance or anything else, and so a lot of this is very new to them, and trying to navigate through the multiple pages of that budget and let alone any analysis on those numbers or the history leading up to those numbers is kind of beyond their the typical director's knowledge bank. So again, I think this committee could provide some helpful information for the directors as they pursue their budgets and analyze other things related to the finances of the school department. I won't get into any kind of what ifs or examples, but certainly either Hardy or I would be happy to answer any questions or whatever. So let me stop there and see if you, David, or any of the other board members or staff have any questions.
Well, thank you, Jim. Questions from the board? Mr. Breyer is recognized. Now I'll be looking for hands.
Okay, just a couple of things. Our system has individual budgets developed by individual boards. That is one of their prerogatives. It is, in fact, one of their chief missions. it is important to remember this is not a single district. It is several. We might even be adding one soon. So that's the first point. Any proposal that essentially takes that power away from individual boards is a problem. Second, I think it's important to realize that at least in the budget committees that I've chaired, and I've shared my percentage of them, all budget committees are open meetings. That means that if Mr. Merrill, Mr. McAuliffe, any 5 other CFOs in our region wish to join us, they will be welcome. Third, I think it's important to realize that the people that are on those budget committees in the past may feel a little unhappy with the characterization that's been made here, because I've got an accounting degree and I have worked in Canada for many years off and on, essentially building master budget plans for startups. That's what I do. We have had on our budget committee the presidents of small businesses. Deb Wright's been one of them. We've had a number of folks who have done that work, and they've done it reasonably well. I will agree with Mr. McAuliffe's characterization of this year's budget process, because it was atrocious. We literally started the budget process after we would normally be completing the budget process. I have suggested to this board and to literally any board that will talk to me that we need to start the budget process essentially during the summer, not even in the spring, and not do it literally weeks before we need to present something to boards. I think that some of the critique is valid, because I too didn't like the process, and I too was embarrassed by what we put out in terms of report this year. We put out what we had because we only had a few weeks to do it. But I think that the solution is one that's both violates our mandate, our legal mandate to be the, and cedes it to an unelected committee. And that's not a good idea. And I think that inviting Jim and Hardy, who I have great respect for and think is would be a wonderful add, and somebody I plan to ask to help us out anyway, would be a good idea. And I'd like to see Jim and Hardy find me 2 more just like them to work through this process, because that part of it's a really great idea. So that's my response to this.
Thank
David,
you, Jack. Do we have, if you give me just a moment, Jim?
Yeah.
What I was hearing was a backhanded offer to volunteer for the kind of finance committee that you're recommending here, Jim. I do want to find out if there are other board members, then we're going to go back and maybe have a little bit of back and forth discussion.
let me clarify one thing.
Sure.
Jack made it sound like I was saying that this was going to be a budget committee. The finance committee would have nothing to do with your budget committees. Absolutely nothing to do with budgets.
Then
we
you'll
would
have
be,
to help me then.
we would do
Okay, the chair, when addressing this meeting, I'm going to ask both the members and our guests to address their comments through the chair. So when you're done, Jim, addressing the chair, then I will invite someone else to it.
I didn't want it to be confused. I didn't want others to be confused.
There's no confusion here in the chair's seat, is what I will say. I'm going to offer Jack the opportunity here to make a quick response, and I would like to solicit comment from others. Go ahead, Jack. You're addressing the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is another committee, and I'm sorry to, introduce our guests to all the committees we have in this SU. But one of them is essentially a management oversight committee, and for the last year, a large part of that process has been oversight of the finance unit, because with the introduction of of e-finance and just the disaster that it has been, we spent a lot of time on that. And we also were constantly finding errors because the formulas didn't work. And it brought up the need to have a broad committee oversight. I believe Deb, are you the chair of that, or is,
Yes.
yes. And
That's
that
correct.
committee, again, if you're talking about sort of broad oversight of budget practices and sort of administrative finance oversight, I'm not going to speak for Deb as to whether it's welcome, but I'm going to guess, since she runs her business the way I run mine, that again, your input would probably be welcome. I may be over speaking, Deb. Maybe you hate the idea.
Okay, do I have hands? Deb Wright, you're recognized by the chair. Please go ahead.
Okay, so it's not budget, and each of the school boards has their own budget committee, which comes up during budget time. I believe that Mr. McAuliffe, my esteemed co-trustee on the village board, is offering to work through items during the course of the year that come up. There's a lot of different stuff. Now, I just want to say that I was highly embarrassed, frustrated, and other words I probably wouldn't say on screen, about our budget process and presentation, horrible presentation to the public this year for the high school. We were caught up short. Things were way too late. It was very stumbling. There were errors made, corrections made, last minute corrections made, and still errors turned up in the budget booklet. So that's very problematic. Working our way through our first year in with a new business manager and I guess mainly almost all new business office staff, created some problems, plus the software that they're currently using, which is totally different, Mr. McAuliffe. When you get a chance to see these reports, are horrible compared to the way we used to see them prior to the state's new state software. We had what for now, 2 years? Has it been that long? Almost, since we beta tested it. I'm not sure how I feel about it. The committee that we have left is a business analysis and audit committee. And that was based upon some severe problems that occurred almost 2 years ago now in the business office, which we tried to schedule one more meeting so we can see if the questions we had were answered. In the long term, I'm not sure exactly. I guess more information is still needed from what Mr. McAuliffe and Mr. Merrill would provide to the board. I guess that's where I am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there others who have questions? Cheryl Charles.
Well, thank you, and thanks to Jim and to Hardy for this work. There are actually two things that I like about this a lot that I would put out for everyone's consideration. One is that it is advisory, and as Jim described it a few minutes ago, this is financial analysis. This is kind of a deep dive into what's going on from a financial perspective in the district overall, which would include each of the contributing districts, the towns. Secondly, it involves the talent of community members. It's a really powerful way to engage the expertise of more people in our community to help with insight. This is not a decision-making body. At best, it would be advisory. It would be doing analysis that perhaps others of us don't do on a regular basis. So I think there's merit to considering the idea. And thank you both for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Cheryl. I have a hand up from Jessa Westclark. Jess, I would love to hear.
Hello. Yeah, I would love to see the proposal. One thing I have mentioned in individual conversations with various people is that the district is sorely behind, partially because of the just massive inadequacy of the reporting functions of the state mandated software eFinance. We really have to look at data visualization, because going over these budgets even if you understand school budgets and you understand accounting, going over the just bizarre way line items are broken out is really impossible unless you're intimately familiar with it. And I think that's a really, as Deb was saying, our presentations to the public were disastrous. And we have no concept of data visualization or any way to present this data in sort of an aggregate and easily readable format. And I think that's an important part of this committee as well.
Thank you, Jessup. Anyone else here? Priscilla?
Yeah, a lot of it was our late getting the information. And the newness of our staff in the financial office. However, yes, there do continue to be some errors that are, really pop out at you if you're familiar with the accounting that has been done and you look at it that still need correcting. And so finding a group that would work with us, I think it is important. However, I would certainly like them to work with maybe the budget finance committee that we have, so that they're working with that right along. So there is that pairing with the Rockingham, say, and the Rockingham board member, the Grafton person and the Grafton board member, and those things, rather than it being the 6 members of the community and just the chair and the superintendent, because I think we're losing stuff if we do that. But I think their expertise, like Jack said, adding them to it, they're welcome to come to those meetings and participate in those. So I think that would be a better way of using them and helping with the analysis, because the more people we have looking at this with that e-finance problem and all of that stuff going on, the better off I think we'll be. Thanks.
Okay. Before I recognize you, Jack, I want to see if there are any others who haven't had an opportunity to question or comment. If you do, either holler at me if I can't see you on the screen, or a hand or something. Okay, Jack, I think you're going to have last word here. Why don't you go right ahead?
One of the things that Jim has said is absolutely right, and that is the reporting function, as also Justice said, has been a disaster. And he is absolutely right that the report that he wanted that they couldn't run is the sort of report that we should have. In fact, there's a lot of them. And that would be a huge benefit right from the start, because I haven't had the time to necessarily articulate what's wrong with the reports that we're getting and getting into the weeds of that. And it's been a very frustrating endeavor for me. It's not any secret to most of my colleagues here. For the last 2 years, I ended up creating my own Excel spreadsheets so that I had some way of knowing what the heck was going on in terms of the budget. And we can't put those up. We can't say these are Jack Breyer's Excel sheets and we're going to substitute those for the official reports, but I've been tempted. The reality is that stuff, transparency. And you know, Jim, as well as I do, that this has been a long-term issue, that the reporting function, even pre-e-finance, was an exercise in obscurity. And anyone that wanted to do a serious job of going through the budget and understanding how it worked couldn't tell, without doing their own Excel sheets, how many people we had, how much they were paid, why they were paid what they were paid, who they taught, what their relative value was, any of the sort of basic stuff that you would want to have if you were going to do a fiscal analysis. And if Hardy and Jim and a couple other guys want to help out with this process, hallelujah. I just want to make sure that they understand they have partners on these committees, and as long as they're working with them, we got ourselves a good thing going.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Before I invite you, Jim and Harley, for closing remarks. I just want to make it absolutely clear that I am going to ask you if you would reduce your proposal to writing. If you have any questions I can help you with, I strongly encourage you to get in touch with me, and I'll make sure that we find the necessary resources so that when you come back with a proposal, that we have as much information in it as possible. So, you know, what you've put on the table here tonight, in a manner of speaking, is something that we need to give serious consideration to. I also anticipate we might do a little bit of horse trading, but I think that your proposal has merit, and this board needs to seriously consider it. So, Jim or Hardy, any last words before we move on in our agenda?
I would just, I'd like to offer one thought, and this might help the committee either to say we don't want these guys, or maybe it's a good idea. A recent headline caught my attention that the state is messing around with the weighting formulas for children, and that our local budgets are going to go up by $1 million. Bang. And I said, you know, that's, you know, it's so unfortunate that that's what the public gets to see in terms of the headline, rather than, you know, what is it about the current program, and what is it about the changes that would affect WNESU. I'll use that as, you know, obviously it's more complicated now, but as that they would pick on us for $1 million. I mean, it's providing you the analysis so that you could either say to the state or the Senate or the House or your board, this is why it would hit us this much. And I think having that kind of information would be very valuable to you. So anyway, but other than that, you know, we'd be happy to serve, and we would, if you wish, I will certainly put the proposal in writing.
Well, Jim, also Hardy, thank you so much for being here tonight. Your chair very much would like to have a comprehensive written proposal in time so that we can get it in the packets and board members have the opportunity to read it closely, so that when we get back on this topic, we can have a well-informed discussion. Once again, thank you so much for being here tonight. It is appreciated. Lynn, we're up to communication and public comment. I'm not certain how many people we have here who would like to comment. I will make note of the fact that the high school had a pretty good crowd. And I do need to make both the board as well as any potential members of the public who would like to speak aware of the chair's ruling here on communication and public comment. And that ruling is that any member of this community, and the chair defines that as including members of the school community, is welcomed and encouraged to speak to us and not with us during communication and public comment. We have a large number of commenters. It may be necessary to assign a reasonable amount of time so that everyone has the opportunity to speak their piece. But unless overruled by this board, and I hope that I won't be, if you have an involvement in this community, you are welcome to be heard here. So Lynn, do we have anyone here from the public for communication, public comment, or if I just spend a lot of time filling up time?
Right now, I do not see anyone wishing to speak.
Okay, well, thank you. And
David, one thing about that.
yes,
No one is, I see that no one is interested in speaking this evening. However, I would say no matter how someone wishes to participate, they need to do so respectfully.
That's a very wise observation, and I certainly would hope that we would grant people the same courtesy that we would expect ourselves. I guess the chair's determination is we're going to have a debate. Let's use parliamentary language, and I realize that communication in public is not debate, but nonetheless, parliamentary, polite, respectful language is certainly encouraged. And thanks for bringing it up, Deb. We have the minutes of March 24th. Can I have a motion on those minutes, please?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion from, do I have a motion from Cheryl and the second from Deb, or was the other way around? I'll let the board recorder sort that one out. So we have a motion on the floor for the minutes. Are there any corrections to be offered to those minutes before we go to a vote? Okay, then. Oh, Priscilla,
David?
you have a hand up for corrections?
Yes, under audit, after the first sentence, we need to add that it was noted that Deb was appointed by the BFUHS board and Priscilla was appointed by the Rockingham board. Then the administration was going to review for other members. Got that far.
Okay, let's just pause for a moment so that Tara can get that down. Are there any other corrections before I call for a vote? All right, I'm going to roll call it. Starting with the high school. Brenda Farkas, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay. Deb Wright.
Aye.
Rockingham. Jason Terry.
Aye.
Priscilla.
Aye.
George Smith.
Aye.
Union Elementary. Cheryl Charles.
Aye.
Jessa West Clark.
Aye.
Lynn Morgan.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Great. All right. Reports, Superintendent. I hope that everyone got the email that explained that Chris Pratt is not here tonight on an excused absence. If anyone's cranked off about that, you can address the chair. But certainly, if anyone in this school community deserved a break, it's got to be Chris Pratt. So that's why I hope he's not even tuned in here tonight. Okay, Lynn, are you prepared to cover our topics, which are composting and consideration on reopening and the master plan? Or do we need to table those for the next meeting?
As far as the composting in greenhouses, we are hoping to start the composting during summer school and continue it throughout the year. And so that's where we are with that. We are, it is in the grant to purchase the stuff we need, so it won't cost the local budgets anything, and to get whatever training for the students to be able to do that. And we're hoping to get greenhouses too and start, because each school has a small garden and some larger than others. So that's part of it too. So the growing the vegetables and then the composting too.
Thank you, Lynn. Specific questions from the board on this topic? I'm not hearing any. Thank you, Lynn. Can you speak?
I've got one.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, I have two hands now, I see. Priscilla and then Lynn.
Lynn, I'm just curious, and this may not be anything you can answer tonight, but can you tell us, you know, how much we're expanding the summer school, or what you think the plan's going to be? Anything you can tell us about it, whether it's going to be open to everyone, that kind of thing.
Yes. So yeah, and as most of you know, we have sent out a survey to all the parents of the K-8 students in the district. And we're hoping to offer, and it depends again on the committee when we meet, to use ESSER funds. We'd like to use ESSER funds to have free summer school programs for 6 weeks, 5 days a week, for students that go to our, that are entering, I think it's entering first grade through 8th grade. We do have a scamp camp or kinder camp for 2 weeks for students entering kindergarten. We will have that as well. But we are planning on using ESSER funds. We're hoping that we can get it off the ground, and we're pretty sure we are. There's a lot of interest, a lot of responses from the survey. The Bellows Falls schools, Central School and Saxons River, have not, and I don't understand why not, but they haven't really had a 21C grant or an after-school grant. They do work through during after school, they work through the Y. But we would like to have a school sponsored with school ESSER funds, summer school, and then open up an after-school program that would be run by the district. So that what happens in Westminster and Grafton can also, and at the middle school, they have an excellent program. And so what happens in those 3 other schools will also happen at the 2 Bellows Falls schools, Saxons River and Central. So we're looking for, equity, for all the students, and we're looking for opportunities for growth. But I have, since I got here, I felt that was something that was lacking in Central School and Saxons River. So I'm excited to have these extra funds to be able to include them and for them to have their own summer school. We're very excited about it.
Answer your questions, Priscilla?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think she's talking about the funds like the governor had talked about, all the extra money that's
Right.
funneled to recovery.
Yeah, so ESSER 1 was mitigation from the COVID, the whole disease. ESSER 2 is what we're looking at now, and ESSER 2 is about loss of learning and education, and how can we improve the opportunities for kids, for students, their outcomes, because there has been a certain amount of learning loss. Summer school is a very big deal when it comes to learning loss. And when you think that we have left our kids to their own devices with their families for 6 months, the idea now that we can actually have them with us for 6 weeks during the summer for exciting things. I mean, we have these weeks there, there's going to be nature week, and then there's going to be music week and sports week, and each week is going to have a theme. And the kids will be engaging in some really exciting things. We're hoping we can have field trips, outdoor field trips. Where, we want to bring them to Hogback Mountain Conservation. We want to do these things with them. So we're pretty excited that we can offer these things, but it's really going to be about fun as much as it is about education recovery. We want to get them outside, we want to play, we want to have fun, we want to teach them composting, gardening, just have a lot of fun with them. I'm sure they had an awful summer. They didn't have a great summer, they didn't have a great spring last year. The business was hybrid in the fall, wearing their masks all the time. They'll still wear their masks in the summer, but just kind of get them back to something normal, some normalcy, and more time with peers, because they were alone for so long, away from their friends for so long. So this is really what we want. So,
Are we good here, Priscilla?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
but I
thank
could
you.
talk all night.
No, I
so
love it, Lynn. Thank you so much.
This is Chair Lynn, also.
Lynn Morgan, you're next. Lynn, you're going to need to unmute for us.
There you go. Thank you. Lynn, I was just wondering about the composting. Do we have somebody coming in to teach us about composting? I've just recently done a workshop with that and learned just so much that I didn't know before.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for. I mean, if we're going to do composting, we really want to do it right. And so, yeah, that's really what it's not just throw the things over there and tell the kids to put their food in. You can't, you got the milk you can't put in, you got the meat you can't. So So we really want, yeah,
There's a layering process that I had never totally understood, and the way it was presented, the light bulb finally went on.
yeah. So maybe I'll be calling you up for some,
Okay.
some contacts
Okay, we'll do.
for our kids.
Come up.
Thanks.
Super.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. Questions answered? Okay, I'm going to recognize Cheryl Charles, and I believe I also have a hand up from Jack. Go ahead, please, Cheryl.
Just a quick question about the composting. In the past, we've talked about it specifically in Westminster. We're not yet talking about all of the food, the lunches and breakfasts and such, right? We're talking about something special as a way to move into it, like garden related. I'd love to see us do all of it, but I don't think that's what you're talking about yet.
The one thing that we have to be aware of now, and when we're teaching the students, and we'll have more time and more freedom in the summer. Right now, because of COVID, all our food is individually, individually packed. And we're not washing dishes, we're not doing that. So when the kids throw away, they're throwing away the whole kit and caboodle. We want to, take the time for them to separate and understand that, how they separate the food from this to that. Because everything is packaged because of COVID. And hopefully that will ease up as well as soon as things get back to normal.
Do you have a follow-up, Cheryl? Oh, you're muted again, Cheryl.
Now, my point would be that it is complicated. I want everybody to understand we're not yet going to the scale that a lot of us would like. This is incremental.
Okay.
And it's a good step. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. And the chair did promise to recognize my colleague, Mr. Breyer, and asked Mr. Breyer if he would be willing to yield just a moment so that Deb Wright could take a few swings. I think that's why you're here, aren't you, Deb? Is that all right with you, Jack?
Yeah, I go back and forth. My system isn't strong enough that a lot of people are using, so I have to turn the camera off from time to time. But hey, Jack, it looks like I cleaned my lens, and that took care of my hazy issue. It wasn't broken. Of course, I'll be glad to see when we move further into all of our food waste, as opposed to just the beginning. But I appreciate the entrance into it. It makes me very happy when I saw it on the agenda. I was so excited. In part because you must realize we're all paying in our school budgets for someone else to pick it up. It's the Grow Compost of Vermont firm that's picking up, and it accounts for a few $1,000s over all the schools over the course of the entire school year. When again, for me, this would be a teaching moment for kids to learn how to take care of their world better, and how to also save money and utilize materials that could be put back into the earth and create more crops and so on and so forth. The constant culture of going round and round to the cycle of life. So I'm really happy to hear it started. Thank you so much, Lynn. And thank you for your description of what's getting going. I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. Jack Breyer and then Jessa Westclark.
Only one point, which is that I don't think people appreciate Cheryl Charles and Lynn Morgan's level of expertise in this space. I've actually read their materials, and I'm blown away by what they know, and I hope that the administration makes use of them informally.
Thanks, Jack. Jessa.
Hi, I just had a couple, excuse me, questions regarding the grant we received. Are we just doing like a backyard grade composting, or do we plan on this being a first step towards our own commercial composting?
Essentially, it is an education endeavor for the students. We really want to teach it. If the older students, perhaps in the middle school or the high school, want to use that as a situation where they get their community service credits, if they want to start some kind of commercial endeavor, I think that's great. We're really.
I think it's a grade of compost. So the more commercial grade composting, you do all the meat and paper towels and things like that. And it's actually a fairly significant revenue source in some places. you can pre-sell your compost sort of for the year. And then the only other, and I think this is great. I don't want to take away from the fact that we've made this first step. I think it's wonderful. My only other comment would be, I think as a board member, we kind of have the prerogative to do this. Can we ask Harley to price out what it would cost, the difference to source all this single serve packaging, that using it like cellulose and bamboo based, so it is entirely compostable?
I agree. You can ask him that. He's already doing that, particularly with the utensils.
Oh, good.
Yeah, the utensils are biodegradable, and I believe I think all his stuff is pretty much biodegradable. And he was able to buy those with RCF grant, which is another piece more of the CARES grant. So he used the CARES grant to buy all of those supplies because, again, it was for COVID mitigation. It wasn't ESSER funds, but it was called CRS, COVID Recovery Fund, and he used those grants early on. So yeah, but I believe most of it, if not all,
That is fantastic. Yeah, because so like the bamboo utensils and the cellulose plastics, most of them, your sort of backyard, plastic drum composter is not really able to break those down. So I don't know, like we're not getting the full benefit of that. It would be cool if we could in the future.
And that's the plan. That's the hope. That is the hope, that we'll be able to separate everything out, at least for the kids, to learn that and to get into the habit.
That is fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to move on from composting to considerations on full-time reopening? I think we are. Lynn, are there any updates on considerations, as we refer to it, for full-time reopening that has been a topic of local discussions? Is there any master plan or overall
right now the master plan is definitely K to 6. Every student in K to 6 will be coming back next Monday for 5 days a week. I am not sure. My understanding is 7 to 12. It will be 3 weeks later or 2 weeks later, the second week in May for 7th through 12th. And that's what I understand. Now, these things could change, but I do know for sure, K to 6, they're all back full-time, 5 days a week, starting Monday. I don't know what the governor has to say between 3 feet and 6 feet at this point. They were hoping things might have changed, but I think what the schools are doing now are making plans, making preparations to have them back the second week in May, and that could change. Chris could have more updated information than me.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. I want to just remind board members that even though we're speaking globally here, that these decisions are locally made. So for specifics, I think we're going to need to go back to our local boards. And having said that, Priscilla, I have your hand.
Yeah, the document that came out last week on Thursday said that they are at 3 feet for all schools at this point. So that if you can get a hand on that, yes, they went to 3 feet for all of them in that new document, and that was I think on Thursday. Is what we were told.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Priscilla. Anyone else? Okay, let's keep moving here. Master plan, inclusive of select board dates. Do we have any update on that, Lynn? I'm guessing we don't. That's all right, because I have a strong feeling we're going to be meeting again on our regular meeting date in 2 weeks, and we can address it then. All right. Flora, I believe you're here, and you must be one of the more patient women in the WNESU because your report's critical and we make you wait a long time to give it. So if you are prepared to give us a finance and budget report, I think we're ready to hear it.
Yeah, thank you. So right now we are working really hard with eFinance and their staff with a lot of their new changes. The state is changing all of the codes for the accounts. So right now we are 100% set with the high school accounts. We are now working with the Union Elementary accounts. As well, they are going to be changing our payroll codes, but I put those ones on hold till we finish closing the year. I just want us to be able to have everything set and fine. Everybody gets their payments, and then we'll worry about the codes. So we are meeting with Leslie from eFinance on April 30th, so that way she could just give us the date that she will then do the switch of the codes. The problem is that the codes connect as well with the reports that we run, checks, and everything else. So we just want to avoid having any issues with anything. We've been doing pretty good with payroll. We've been always ahead since I started. So I just want to keep it that way. As well, we are working with the time tracking system from eFinance. So we want to implement these changes for FY22 with the new school year to have the staff do their time tracking, everything done through eFinance. It helps the payroll process and approval process of management. As well, they're going to have a mobile app that they're supposed to download, so that way, even from their phone, the staff is able to manage their accounts and do any updates, including benefits updates, information update. I met this morning with Community Bank to get some information on line of credits, the data from the past years, what we have done. Not that I am anticipating that anything is needed, but just in case, I did follow up with all the towns so we could have the last portion of payments of the assessments. So that way we wouldn't have to use any line of credits. As well, we're working with Community Bank for a lot of accounts consolidation. We had different businesses with different banks, so we're trying to consolidate everything with Community Bank. But that will be later on after we finish with our year. And that is what we are up to right now. As well, we are up to following up with the state report, so we could just get the funds for grants that we got and that we have applied for. And I think that's what I have up for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Flora. We ready to move on? Looks like it. Okay. Committees and assignments. I asked to put this on the SU agenda because I think there was some confusion as to what committees, which apparently are still standing, are actually still active and or needed. Lynn, I'm not sure if you have an update on this or not. I'm anticipating that we may need to come back at the next meeting and review the list with board members here. Is there anything on this that we can update the board on, or if I?
No, I'd like to leave it to Chris, if that's okay.
Okay, it is left to Chris. We will carry this one on toward our next agenda. Okay, new business for discussion and action. We've already accomplished 6A, which was the proposal for the district-wide finance committee. We have on here also a review of a 21-22 school calendar. What this means is that we would have a so-called master calendar, which would be a planning document. So we would know, I think much to Mr. Breyer's delight, when we would begin things like planning budgets and what the lead times would be on annual meetings, and when reports would need to be filed for those annual meetings, as well as other events and dates, which are very important in schools, and that we would know what that calendar looked like for all of the schools at the same time. So Lynn, unless that's been completed, I think we can come back and try to address that in more detail in next meeting. Am I correct in that? Okay.
You are correct.
Okay. Then we have come down to 6C, which is act on WNESU teacher roster. We will discuss this in executive session. I would anticipate that action is likely to be taken as a result of that executive session, because we will either have to approve that teacher roster or amend it accordingly. So if you want to, stay tuned and we'll find out what happens. Old unfinished business for discussion action, Coalition for Vermont Student Equity. And I suppose I should handle that one. And what I can tell you, and I may have said this the last time we met, that contrary to Senate President Pro Tem Becky Ballant's prediction, S13, which was a bill introduced by Phil Baruth, former chair of Senate Ed, to address the apparent inequities in the weighting formula in Act 173, did in fact make it out of the Senate Ed Committee and into House Ed, where I believe it's actually up for discussion this week, which is a huge amount of progress, and I think an unfortunate embarrassment for Senator Ballant, but what it means in practical terms is that we have a reasonable chance of actually having some influence on the weighting formula, which is enacted but not implemented before the end of this fiscal year, 2021. I, in the past, have informed this board that you will be seeing from time to time both what are referred to as updates as well as action alerts from Maggie Lenz, who is a lobbyist working on behalf of the coalition. And obviously the updates are FYIs, so you know what's going on. And the action alerts are going to ask you to do stuff like send an email to your representative or your senator and urge specific action. And I will tell you that it was the willingness of a lot of school board members in this date to heed that request to directly contact members of the legislature, which I think have gotten us to the point that we're at now. So they will be coming around when you see them. I would certainly appreciate it if you would read them, and if you can act on them. You're doing what your constituents elected you to be here to do. I don't know if there are questions. If there are, I'll try and answer them, but otherwise I'd kind of like to keep moving. Okay, we have a negotiations update coming in executive session. And my goodness, we're down to director's comments. And in no particular order, I'd like to start off with Cheryl Charles. If you're able. Well, Cheryl, you appear to be still muted. If you're having trouble connecting.
I'm off.
Great. There you are. We're ready.
All right. I'm back. It's just too complicated with all my devices here, but thank you. At any rate, a few comments. I would like to address some things that I have raised in the past, but to put them in a new context. And that is I'm among the many who read the recent report in the Digger that showed that the Wyndham Northeast is at maybe number 3 in the state for receiving federal funds in support of enhancing education. That's a lot of credit to Lynn Carey, to Dr. Carey, to Chris Pratt, and to the whole team for that. I think that also leads us to an opportunity I'd like the chair to consider and all of us to consider. I think we might need what in the past some people have called a retreat, others call it an advance. I'd like to have the whole board and community members who'd want to join us come together for several hours, if not a whole day, to really dive in depth into things related to, these are categories I'll put forward, others will have others, but I'm thinking professional development for our educators. I can think of a whole range of topics that would help us in these times. I'm thinking curriculum. I'd like us to have a much deeper understanding of, as board members, of elements of the curriculum that are required and where we've got autonomy and latitude and room for innovation at the local level. I think it's incredibly important that we have a better grasp on that as board members. Thirdly, I'd like attention to serving all students. I heard Lynn talk about the loss of skills, and which are academic and social for many students. We are, as I've raised in other meetings, also going to have students come back who are proficient above their grade levels. They have, during this time, had enough support that they will be exceeding what others are doing at their grade level. And I want us to really be responsible and understand how we're serving all children on the broad spectrum. So I think that warrants our attention. And finally, a fourth topic, and David, you'll be pleased to hear that I did write this up tonight. I will send you something in writing that you can share with others and all of us can think about. But the fourth category is community engagement. There's no time more important than this as we come out of all the risks and trauma and challenges associated with this pandemic. What are the opportunities and how can we really work with one another on a broader community scale than we may be doing right now? So those are some things I'd like everyone to consider, and I'll share, as I say, some of these ideas in writing with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Priscilla, you ready?
I'll try to be. I was looking at, we talked about not doing the calendar tonight and trying to get it in sync with others. There have been schools that have already announced that they will be doing totally all in person and absolutely no remote next year because of the importance of the mental health of their students. So when we're planning this, I would hope that that is being considered and absolutely a priority for us as well. And in thinking about that, we have to also realize that we each year made the calendar when I was working, and no matter what we did, it ended up with some variances because of the different schools. There were a couple of years where the tech center started earlier and went later. There were due to some options that they had to close at different times than we did. And so those factors will always be there. I was pleased with the calendar that was put out to us, that there was consideration given for the fact that next year we're going to be celebrating 3 years of graduates by the Alumni Association, and graduation is placed on the third Thursday of the month, which also allows us to be in sync with the Alumni Association's projected weekend, which is important to them. Yeah, we are supposed to be. We voted as a board to be sure that we were following that and watching out for that, and I was pleased to see that on there by the ones that had looked at that so far. So I just wanted to mention those things. I really appreciate the fact that people are doing that. And I want to give a shout out to hoping that Hardy and Jim will come up with a proposal that includes a member from each board, so that, possibly our current budget finance committee, which does include that, so that they can be more prepared with looking at the budget for next year. Thanks.
Thank you, Priscilla. I'm not sure that Molly's still here. Molly, you still here? Okay, Jack.
Yeah, just a couple quick things. To the point about getting kids back in school, Pfizer, among others, have been doing studies of kids that are 12 to 16. I'm prepared in our own local district meeting to ask the state to put young people on lists so we can get them ready to be vaccinated as soon as the CDC validates that, which I believe is a formality. So they need to get on with that. In our recent high school meeting, I think it's worth observing a couple of things, one of which was that a number of parents and teachers and others asked about where we are with policies around some of the issues that came up recently at the high school. I think we need to get policies in order and get things moving sooner rather than later. And when it comes to the high school, I just want to give a second shout out to some of the people that spoke very thoughtfully from this board. Brenda Farkas in particular, I heard more positive feedback from her statement than I've heard from board members in a very long time, and just want to give a public shout out to that. One other thing, we may be adding members to this board because all the paperwork is in for the SBE, who are going to be looking at our case. I've had some encouragement from John Carroll that we might actually win this thing. And so we'll see what happens. So there you go.
Thanks, Jack. George Smith, I see your moniker. Are you here?
I have nothing to add tonight, David. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, George. Jason Terry?
Thank you, David. I don't have any comment. I just wanted to say thank you to all my fellow board members. I appreciate you all for everything you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Lynn Morgan?
I want to just thank everybody who has been doing so much. It was very encouraging tonight, the different pieces that were brought out. And I felt like there are some pieces there that are going to help me to finally start learning some of the areas like finance that I totally don't understand. So I'm looking forward to getting more knowledgeable there.
Thanks, Lynn. Brenda Farkas, wish Jack hadn't stole all my thunder.
Oh, no, I'm actually all set tonight. Thank you. I talked enough before.
Brenda. Deb Wright?
Yes, I agree with Brenda. I've done a lot of talking in the last couple of meetings, and so I think I'm good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deb. Jessa West Clark?
Hi. I wasn't going to speak, but Cheryl brought up two things that are sort of near and dear to me. One, when she was talking about, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay. She was talking about setting curriculum and ways for our kids to excel. And she brought up a good point. This has been raised before, that the state standards are minimums. It's the bare minimum required. And we absolutely should be looking at going well beyond that everywhere we can. The other thing she mentioned was kids that are working above grade level, both before and after the pandemic. And I will say those children are inadequately served by most of our schools in the district and by our state, who make mention in the state standards for education of identifying advanced learners or high achieving students, but make absolutely no provisions for providing them with an adequate education at their level. And I really hope that is an item that's going to be looked at here. Thanks.
Thank you, Jessa. I guess it's down to me. I do need to second what Jack Breyer said. Brenda made one of the most eloquent comments on the director's comments at the high school meeting that I've ever heard. And I thank you for doing that, Brenda. It was the wisdom of ages, I think. Speaking of the high school, we have a new principal. His name is John Broadley. It's a name that may be familiar to some people here because John's been in the school, I think, about 20 years, filled a number of roles, the last 12 of which were spent as the assistant principal. And I think that time will prove that John was the right guy at the right time. We'll see about that. I would also actually like to thank Tara Darrell for coming in and taking minutes. I realize that it can be a challenge when you're working with a bunch of challenging individuals on a challenging board, and Tara, I appreciate that. I'm looking, actually, I suppose we should set the date of the next meeting. And it appears that the date of the next meeting would be our regular meeting date of April 28th. That's the next meeting. Now we deal with the executive session. We have, I believe, 3 topics for executive session. We need to act, we need to discuss, and then in open session, act on the WNESU teacher roster. We should have an update on negotiations, and heaven help me here, and especially you, Lynn. I think we had a third item, or was it just those 2? Teacher roster and negotiations. All right, great. Okay, so I would like to entertain a motion, please, to go into executive session for the purpose of discussion of the teacher roster and to update the WNESU board on negotiations, inviting administration and all board members, not just the voting ones. I guess that just means Jack, to attend. So a motion, please. How about it, Priscilla? Can we have a motion? Okay, and a second. Thank you, Lynn. All right, I'll roll call it if we're ready. Cheryl Charles?
Yes.
Okay. Jessa West Clark?
Yes.
Lynn Morgan?
Yes.
Jason Terry?
Yes.
Priscilla Lambert?
Yes.
George Smith?
Yes.
Brenda Farkas?
Yes.
Deb Wright?
Yes.